Saturday night keynote really wouldn't count unless I showed you incriminating photos of my children, right? And so one of the best things I told the guys, one of the best things about being a dad is when you got the kids and your wife leaves the house for a while. And it's just you and the kids, because then it's basically no adult supervision whatsoever. And you can have a lot of fun. So first of all, I'm going to show you. This is Colby. Colby's in first grade now. Colby lives in his Angry Birds underwear 24 hours a day, and that's fine as long as he outgrows it before he goes off to college. I'm good with that. And so this is a little snippet of what goes on in the Evert household when no one's there to watch the kids but me.
Here we go, everybody. Are you ready? Okay, here we go.
That's my boy. That's my boy Colby, and we've been so blessed. We've got beautiful kids. We had a little boy. He's 2 now. His name is Michael. This is little Michael, and it was cool when we were pregnant. Specifically, my wife. We go to the doctors and we brought the other little kids. And we said, hey guys, if you look at that TV screen, the ultrasound, you're going to see your baby brother for the very first time. No kidding. As soon as the unborn baby's profile came into focus, his little hand reaches up and it waves back at the screen. And the kids are like, hi. The doctor's like, I've never seen that before. And I'm like, yeah, that's my kid. He's pro-life. And we've been, starts early. But we've been blessed, beautiful children. We got this little guy here. He's being real modest there, so we want to bring up our kids in the virtues. Not just modesty, which is good, but courage and integrity and honesty and just bravery. And so, in order to instill those virtues in my kids, I did what pretty much any responsible and respectable young dad would do. I bought them Mexican wrestling masks, okay? And now, it's kind of, so our house is pretty much like lucha libre going on there with Nacho Libre. And I know a little bit of Spanish, just un poquito. And so what I do is when they wrestle in Spanish, I do like the sports casting in Spanish. So this is kind of a little footage of what goes down.
Queso, bendita tú eres, entre todas las mujeres. Hola, cuidado, pide mojada. Eres agua de mi fuente. ¡Ah, que camina! ¡Oh, benditos pequeños!
So there's my boys. And John Paul there on the left, he's in second grade now, and he just had a school play a couple weeks ago, and they did the Bug's Life, right? So every kid gets to dress up like a different insect, and man, I can't even tell you how proud I was. I mean, they got ladybugs, butterflies. I was so proud, man. My boy, he's the maggot. Yeah. I don't know if he had to audition to get the role, but he got it and he nailed it, man. And I was so proud of him. I'm sitting there with all the parents, and I got my phone. I'm filming. I'm like, that's my maggot. That's him right there. He's my maggot. And I was just praising him afterwards. What an awesome maggot he was. And just like, this is the lens through which the Father sees the children. The problem is, when it comes to God seeing us, we don't see ourselves that way. We just see the filth, we see the problems. We don't understand that he sees us in a way that nobody else sees us, even our parents, even ourselves sometimes. God the Father sees us like the child. Likewise, how does Christ look at us? Well, the church is the bride of Christ, so Christ is the groom. How does a groom look upon his bride, especially on the day of the wedding? Whenever I go to weddings, I love, instead of looking at the bride, I'll take a quick peek at her. Okay, she's real pretty, great. I like watching the groom. Because what goes on before the wedding, I remember I was in college and I played college baseball with this guy from Montana, big cowboy, rugged. He got married in his cowboy boots. And I remember I was one of the groomsmen, and so I'm watching the doors swing open, and then there's his bride, and I'm watching him, and he's all tough, and he's like, yeah, he's got his belt buckle going on. And the doors swing open, and he just turns into this quivering, slobbering mess of a man. His jaw's like shaking, and just the sight of her. And while she's getting ready, I mean, when brides get ready on their wedding day, they get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're doing the nails and the hair, and they're still looking on Pinterest to find other ways to do things, to get it all right and all perfect that day. And that's what's cool about being a guy. You roll out of bed like a half hour before Mass, you tuck in your shirt, spit in your hair, you're ready to go down the aisle. And the woman before the wedding, it's like Bridezilla in the back there. She's like, no, my hair, my nails, nothing. And she's so consumed, like, is it all right? Am I all perfect? She's so focused. Meanwhile, he sees none of the imperfections. That's my bride, and his heart is ravished by her. I don't know if you've seen on Instagram, Pinterest, people are posting pictures now of what grooms look like when the bride is revealed to them for the first time. And I've got some of these pictures I found on there. And look at these guys. I mean, he's losing it. Take a peek at the next guy. Yeah, he's gone. Okay. This guy's biting himself, so he's obviously quite interested. And then that guy's a mess. Got this guy here. I mean, look at that dude. Look, yeah, he's happy. My favorite one, oh yeah, right there. So, and so to understand the way that God sees us is not the way that we often see ourselves. We see ourselves through this lens of all of our imperfections. And certainly God sees them, but he's able to see through it better than we are. And the scriptures we want to take a peek at today, again, are these verses where he says that, you did not choose me. I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit and that your fruit should remain. And when he chose us not so that we could do a particular work for the kingdom of God, he chose us knowing that he had a mission in mind for us that nobody on earth could accomplish. Some of you are going to go on to become priests or religious. Some of you could be speakers, musicians. Some of you are wonderful holy moms, dads. Maybe you have different gifts. Maybe you're good with crayons or like whatever, gift he's given to you. Only you're capable of using it. But in the end of the day, he's not calling you because he wants to get something out of you. I got this good work, that's why I'm calling you. He's calling you because he loves you. And this, honestly, just because I have a microphone in my hand and I'm on stage doesn't mean that I even understand this myself. I honestly do struggle with this, that he actually loves me, that you were a thought in the mind of God from all eternity. Not only in this life did he call you forth, but he still seeks you. He literally thirsts for you, wants to spend all eternity. It's hard to grasp. There's a theologian at Vatican II who was asked, what is the most difficult theological mystery you've ever had to wrestle with? And he just said, Jesus loves me. And I'll go one further than that he actually likes you. Because a lot of times, I know he loves me, did the crucifix thing, he loves me, yeah. No, he likes you. It's hard to swallow. Because look, wait a minute. Sometimes I feel like my family doesn't like me. Sometimes I feel like my best friends don't even like me. Sometimes I don't even like me. And now you're telling me this all-perfect God, creator of the universe, actually likes me. It's difficult for the intellect to comprehend. But we all have parts of our life that are hard to believe. This is simply one of them for some of us. Pope Francis, I was really blessed, actually sent me a message about a month and a half ago. It was technically through a tweet, so I guess 2 million people got the same thing. But it felt like it was for me. And this is what he tweeted. And if you don't follow him on Twitter, you got to join him. Because, it's great to wake up in the morning. There's a tweet from the Pope right there. And this is what he said. This is the vicar of Christ. He said, we all have in our hearts areas of unbelief. Let us say to the Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. This is the Pope saying we all have areas of unbelief. And I felt like just calling him afterwards and being like, just thank you. And he doesn't speak English. He'd be like, no hablo inglés. But just thanking him for his authenticity. That sometimes it's hard to buy. But for those of you maybe more intellectual skeptical, understand that just because something is difficult to wrap your brain around does not make it untrue. I want to stretch your imagination a little bit to understand some of the realities that are going on. Go out into the universe and take a peek at what's going on. The size of Earth is about 8,000 miles in diameter. So if you dug a hole from here to Mongolia, it's about 8,000 miles. Now the sun is about 865,000 miles across. And what did they discover 3 years ago? The biggest star that we've ever seen. This thing is 30 million miles across. And we never knew it existed until 3 years ago. Astronomers named it. They named it R136A. What do they name their kids? That is Unit 7. I gotta get more creative. There's this glowing, massive, heavenly yellow body. They could name it Mac Daddy or Jesse Manabusin or something. They could come up with something that's just better, but they let it, whatever works. So they found this thing. It's 30 million miles in diameter, okay? It is 10 million times brighter than the sun. And you can't see it with the naked eye. They didn't even know it there. 10 million times brighter than the sun. Now, when a sun dies and it collapses, it's what's called a neutron. Some neutrons become what are called pulsars. Pulsars spin like Earth, we do once every 24 hours, spin on the axis. A pulsar spins 700 times a second. And they found more than 20 of these things. Found about 200 of them, and they're about 20 miles wide, spinning 700 times every single second. The physicist said if you took a teaspoon of matter from one of these collapsed stars, it would weigh more than 1 billion tons. A teaspoon of matter is 1 billion tons. How do you even wrap your brain around that? Like your mind just stops. That's like I asked my kids the other day. I'm like, okay, kids, what weighs more? You know, a pound of feathers or a pound of bricks? And they're like, a pound of bricks. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay, boys, what weighs more, 50-pound boy or 50-pound girl? And they're like, a 50-pound boy. And I'm like, yeah, your math is terrible. It's my fault. But you know, some things are just hard to buy. But let's leave the universe. You go down even smaller. Here on Earth, there's mysteries you can see with your eyes you can't believe. There's a bird called the common swift. It can stay in the air 4 years at a time without landing. It eats, it sleeps, presumably it mates, all in the air without landing 4 years at a time. Go even smaller, there's a flea. It's called the oriental rat flea. This thing, they said, jumps up and down 600 times an hour for 3 days straight without stopping. You know what that reminds me of? That one kid in your youth group during the Steubenville conference weekend, 3 days straight, 600 times an hour, he doesn't stop jumping, and you're probably sitting right next to them for the Saturday night keynote, so offer it up. But you go even smaller. Scientists say that flying throughout the universe right now are hundreds of trillions of photons. Right now, they said there are more than 100 trillion photons flying through your body right now, and you can't perceive it. And if you were to take all the information in the whole world, you could fit it all into 4 grams of human DNA. All of these mysteries should at least let us step back and think, okay, God can become man? Yeah, I think he could handle that. He could come under the appearance of bread and wine to be my nourishment spiritually as the body and blood of Christ. Okay, I can get that. He loves me? Okay, maybe it's hard for me to believe because what I've been through in life, but okay, I can at least make an act of the will to say, okay, God, I believe that. And it's one thing to fully understand it, but it's another thing to encounter it. My wife is very open about the life that she used to live. She had a really crazy life in high school especially, and guys and drinking parties. And one night she's coming home from a party. She'd been drinking and doing some drugs and stuff with guys, and just was driving home, and she passed by a Catholic church, and she felt this call to go in. But she's like, I can't go in. I'm where I'm at in life. But the call, just come to me. Just come as you are. And she pulled over to the side of the road. She's like, look, I don't belong in there. I'm one of, I've done all this stuff. But the call, just come to me. Come. And she's in the car talking to herself. She said, I probably look like a lunatic to anybody else. And she gave up. And she said, okay, I'll go. And she walks into this Eucharistic adoration chapel in the middle of the night. And she kneels down, and there's no one in there except for one little old lady praying the rosary. And she knelt down. She's like, I wonder if she can smell the marijuana on me. And she kneels down. She's got her face down. And then she just looks up at the Eucharist. And she just said, here I am, God, in my sin. Help me. And she said at that moment, for the first time in her life, it dawned on her that God actually wanted her ugly. That we've all lived with this assumption that once we get it all together, that's when God is really going to want us. Father did such a beautiful job explaining last night Zacchaeus, where Zacchaeus encountered Christ. And if you've read the gospel episode, afterwards he said, hey, half of my belongings I give to the poor. And if I've defrauded anyone, I will pay them 4 times over. He didn't do it so Christ would choose him. He did it because of the joy of knowing he had been chosen by Christ. We get it all upside down. We come to the conference and we think, okay, I'll go there, but then I know I'm going to get there and God's going to be like, okay, first step, you got to get rid of your porn. You got to quit fooling around your boyfriend. You got to quit doing this, quit cheating on math, get over your eating disorder, quit being so depressed. You got to quit that Mexican drug cartel you've been involved in. You got to get everything together. And then when you get yourself all scrubbed down, then you come to me and I'm going to be so pleased with you. We all kind of do this. We get it completely backwards. And in high school, I didn't have the wild, crazy life that my wife had. I figured I'm like the youth group kid, and I figured I'm good. I know I do some stuff, but, I'm not as bad as those people over there. I'm good. I'm kind of like between Mother Teresa and Hitler. I'm kind of right in the middle there. Like, you got Pope Francis and Osama bin Laden and then me right there. It's a pretty good place. And I would tell myself, I'm not that bad. Look, I look at porn. Okay, fine. Okay, yeah, I hooked up with that girl. Okay, whatever. I had a little bit to drink. Yeah, I know I cheat on my test. I swear a lot. I lie to my parents. Okay, maybe I'm not that good, but, but I'm not as bad as those other people. And I would always kind of just sit that fence. And the friends I'd hang out with were terrible. My best friend, driving home from school, he pulls a car to the parking lot of a pornographic adult bookstore. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I want to go in the nudie bookstore. I'm like, don't go in some nudie bookstore, you filthy little pervert. And he's like, well, I'm going in there. I'm like, I'm not going in there. I'm not some perv. My porn's at home. I'm sitting, I'm like, wait a minute. And like 5 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, what is he doing? I look at my watch. Oops, I had a confirmation class to go to. But I'm sitting in the parking lot of some filthy bookstore waiting for the best friend to come out. And it dawned on me, okay, I made a pretty stupid choice of friends. And things started to get shaken up in my life. I remember showing up baseball practice in high school, and our first baseman is crying. And I'm like, hey, Paul, there's no crying in baseball. Like, what's happening? I look around, and everybody's crying. And I'm like, dude, what's going on? I'm like, hey, where's Rick? The pitcher. I'm like, where's Rick? And I'm like, you didn't hear? Yeah, he drank some more after practice, and then yesterday he flipped the car, and he got decapitated. He's dead. And I remember signing an autograph in the baseball, the rest of the team, putting it right next to his body in the casket, and then them closing it. And I'm like 15, like I don't know how to process this suffering. I show up at work. I'm like, hey, where's Joe? We got the same shift. Oh, you didn't hear? Go read the article in the back. There's the newspaper, his face. He got in another fight at a party. He's on cocaine, drinking. A guy shot him in the head and killed him. And I remember laying in my bed, just pounding the pillow, like, why, God? Like, I don't know how to deal with this suffering. How is this happening? Where are you in the midst of all this mess? And starting to like sink into this like just depression, holding a knife to my wrist and being like, seriously, if I was gone, would anybody even miss me? I mean, really, that close. Just wondered, what is the whole point of going on? And look, it's not that I wanted to die. It's just, I just wanted a reason to live. I remember a teacher put in my yearbook, have a great summer, JER 2911. I'm like, what is that, like your license plate? He's like, it's a Bible verse. I'm like, all right, whatever. And I didn't read it for years. And I flip it open one day. Okay, Jeremiah 29. It said, for I know well the plans I have in mind for you, plans to give you a future full of hope. When you come to me, when you seek me with all of your heart, you'll find me with you, and I'm going to change your lot. And I could feel this call that, wait, he has a plan for me? He didn't just create me for nothing for this life of depression as a junior in high school or whatever. And at this time, going through confirmation, show you where my heart was at. We're confirmation. I said, okay, raise your hand if you want to go to Mexico to do your service hours to work with the poor down there. I didn't care. I was all about myself. But there was this girl in the confirmation class that was absolutely gorgeous. And so when they said, okay, put your hand up, and if you put your hand up, we'll put your name down, and we'll send you to Mexico. So her hand goes up. I'm like, oh, hey, Holy Spirit's calling me to Mexico too. I'm a missionary. And so I followed her down there, and she married a friend of mine, and that's okay. But when I was down there with the poor, it's like something hit me like, wait a minute, like these kids have nothing, but they have God and they have everything. I have everything, but I have nothing. And it sent me home just kind of scratching my head. There was something I remember sitting in the back of the car, all the dust had settled on this windshield, and someone with their finger had written, once the dust of Mexico settles upon your heart, you will find no such peace elsewhere on earth. I never forgot that. The simplicity of the faith that these people had left a mark on me. And so I went back home, and I'm like, okay, look, I don't want to sit on the fence anymore. This is getting really old. I want to be all in or nothing. But I realized I got to face some serious things if I'm going to do this. First thing I had to face my fear. That, like, if I really do this thing full tilt, I really choose God, like, is he going to make me like these weird people at church? Like, my friend Chris Stefanik once said, look, you're going to meet holy people who are weird, but they were weird before they were holy. So that's helpful to know. But I was still struggling with it because I thought, like, is he going to take away my friends? Is he going to take away my identity from me? But what I learned, someone asked me once, they said, what is it, a saint? And what came to me is that sainthood is the full bloom of the human personality. Sin, on the other hand, dulls our individuality. If you were to line up all the mafia members, all the pimps, all the worst sinners in the world right next to each other, it'd be like clones. You line up the saints, and their individuality is so radiant. You look at people like, just look at some of the saints, like one of my favorites, Blessed Teresa of Calcutta. Mother Teresa was the bomb, all right? When this picture that you're seeing right here, this is when she showed up in West Beirut. And she shows up in West Beirut. There's a big war going on there. And she shows up, and she said, I want to go in West Beirut. It's a big meeting with all the military leaders and state and church officials. And they said, Mother, that's great, but you can't, the war's going on. And she said, no, there's an orphanage there. and it takes care of mentally handicapped Muslim children, and it's right in the middle, so I'm going to go bring the kids out of the war. They said, Mother, you can't go in there. They said, Mother, they killed a priest there last week because he was a priest. They could kill you, Mother. And she said, all for Jesus. Like, how do you argue with this woman? And they said, Mother, let me put it this way. You physically can't get into West Beirut unless there's a ceasefire in the war. You physically can't get there. And she said, oh, well, tomorrow is the eve of Mary's feast day in the church, so we will have a ceasefire in honor of Our Lady. And they said, Mother, I'm glad you're a woman of faith and you're on our side, but don't you think you're being a little tight with God, expecting him to resolve foreign conflicts according to the church's liturgical calendar? And she said, oh, no, I've spoken to Our Lady, and tomorrow the ceasefire will be in her honor. And sure enough, the media shows the next morning a camera panning across West Beirut. The reporter said, we seem to have had a ceasefire of sorts. And then you see Mother just going right in there, playing with the kids. And like, she's awesome. And her faith was so simple. They said, Mother, tell us something that will change our lives. She said, smile at each other. They said, well, Mother, how do you become a saint? She said, say yes to Jesus. That's it. It's not so complicated. And so you've got the beautiful examples. I mean, her personality was not taken from her. You look at other people, like one of my favorites, Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. This dude, rugged tournament skier, mountain climber, looks like an Abercrombie and Filth model. The guy is just a stud. And this dude, by the time he was about 20 years old, roughly, he was paying personally out of his pocket for more than 125 poor families to live. He came from a wealthy family, and he liked playing billiards and pool. So what he would do, he'd go to the pool hall. He'd say, hey, people, if you beat me at pool, I'm going to give you money. If I beat you at pool, you have to come with me to Eucharistic adoration. And so he would annihilate everybody at pool and then bring them all to Eucharistic adoration together. And he would take care of the poor people, and he eventually contracted polio, and he died at the age of 24 from that. And as he was on his deathbed, paralyzed in pain, he asked for paper and pen, kind of scribbled this little note. These are the bus tickets for that poor guy. This is the medicine for this other poor guy. 24 years old, on his deathbed, not moping and whining, oh, my life is over. He couldn't stop thinking of the poor. And his love was so full. And then he died, and they buried him. About 50 years after they buried him, they exhumed the body. They pulled the coffin out of the ground to put him inside the cathedral in Turin because his canonization process was underway. And when they opened the coffin, there he was, about 50 years after his death, perfectly incorrupt. His skin was soft and smooth. His eyes were open, clear, and shining. The cross on his chest, the wood had splintered and corroded, but the metal corpus of Christ was resting there on his chest. He's one of the incorrupts of the Catholic Church. This man, his individuality, his personality was not taken from him. Christ does not take us from ourselves. He gives us back to ourselves. And so I had to come to grips with this, that this is if I want to do this, he's not going to take my personality from me. And the second thing I had to stare square in the face is all my idols, man, all my false consolations. Remember in the scriptures, when Pontius Pilate says, look, I'm going to release to you one of two people and you can have them. Do you want Barabbas or do you want Jesus Christ? And if you ever saw the movie The Passion of Christ, you remember Barabbas? He's not a real good-looking guy. Now, when we sin, in effect, we say, well, that's what I want. Now, I don't want Christ. I want the counterfeit. I want the other thing. But it's pretty obvious that in the end, it's not going to ultimately satisfy. But I had all these false consolations in my life, whether it was the porn or doing other stuff. And with guys, in our men's session, we talked about it. And my encouragement to you is when you go home, really try to investigate why you're struggling. If it's like porn, people think, well, that's just because of my lust. That's the tip of the iceberg. There's always something underneath. Is it when I'm bored? Is it when I'm lonely? Is it when I'm stressed out? I want this relief. Is it because I feel insecure? I don't want to be rejected. Like, what is going on underneath? Is it a sense of entitlement to sin? To really allow Christ to shine his light into our heart, especially tonight. For you girls, I didn't have a chance to be at the ladies' session. They didn't let me in again. But if I could have been there to speak to your heart, what I would beg you to do is never enter into a human relationship looking for the love that only God himself can give to you. Because from the time you girls were 2 or 3 years old, you wanted to know, Am I beautiful? Do you love me, Dad? Do you want me? Are you going to be here for me? Girls, like, I'm sorry, if your dad is absent or abusive in your life, you'll go into the world and the question is not answered. And then some guys show up, yeah, you're beautiful. Yeah, I want you. Feels like it's making up for this missing love. I saw this in my daughter's heart. My little girl, Mary, she's perfect. She's absolutely perfect. I have biblical evidence of this. You want this? In the Bible, what is the number that represents perfection? Do any of you know? 7. Who said that? Okay, give yourself $20. Good job. So the number 7, so when was my little girl Mary? When was she born? She was born on 7/07/07 at 7:07 in the morning. No kidding, I planned that. And so when she's born, look who shows up at the hospital, man. All the news crews. 5 different TV stations to record the arrival of this baby born on 7/07/07. And she is my little queen, my princess. There she is right there. She absolutely owns me. I mean, look at that. I mean, and in case you're wondering, yes, I went there. I got her one too. But, and she can hold her own with the boys, believe me. But this little Mary, this last summer, I'm putting her to bed. I'm kneeling next to her bed, just talking about her day and praying. And I go to give her this hug goodnight. And when I go to hug her, she won't let go. A minute goes by. 2 minutes go by, and she won't let go. And I can feel her little 5-year-old heart beating on mine, her breath on my cheek. And I just give her a big squeeze, and I let go. And she said, wow, Dad, that was a lot of love. I'm like, you bet, girl. And the next night, I gave her another big hug. She said, Dad, your breath smells like dead frogs. It's her mom's cooking. And then, like mine's any better. And I gave her a hug the next night. She said, Daddy, what if your eyeball fell out? I'm like, what is that? But the first night, I saw it. Her little heart, like this precious sponge, just awaiting the love of the Father to fill it up. And if your heart is not filled up in a healthy way at home, it goes out into the world almost being willing to settle for lust. Because, man, dude, at least you feel wanted for something. But then afterwards, my wife said, Jason, she said, you know what happens to girls today? She said, Jason, stuff happens to girls. She said, real serious stuff happens to girls. She said, you know what those girls do with that stuff? She said they stuff their stuff. They put their makeup on, their hair looks great, they got it all together. But she said inside, it's a mess. They're afraid to start crying because then they're afraid they're never going to stop crying, so they numb themselves with false consolations. The hooking up, the smoking the weed, the drinking the beer, the eating disorders, the cutting, you name it, it's all being used to numb the pain of a wound that isn't being healed. She said they need to be taught how to face it, how to own it, and how to heal it. And tonight, what Christ is asking is just show me yourself. Because Pope John Paul II said, in order to see Jesus, we first need to let him look at us. And so to come to him, to be loved by him as you are. And women, from now on, I beg you to use the beauty that God has given to you as a woman. Use that beauty as a sweet bait to catch the hearts of men, leading them to the source of your beauty, which, in case you forgot, is the most blessed Trinity. That the things that God wishes to give to you is not to take you away from yourself, but to give you back to yourself. And so tonight, my invitation to you is just to come exactly as you are to him in Eucharistic adoration. Upon the cross, Christ has given us the invitation, and it's now left for us to choose what we do with that. Archbishop Fulton Sheen said a quote I'll never forget. He said, each and every one of us at the end of our journey of life will come face to face with either one or the other of two faces. And one of them, either the merciful face of Christ or the miserable face of Satan, will say, mine, mine. May we be Christ's. The decisions in your life right now, who you date, where you go to college, these are all temporal things. The decision we make to follow Christ is one decision in our life that will have ramifications for all eternity. And so that's why we're all here. That's why we've all flown here tonight, because this is ultimately what's at stake. This is his proposal to us. He is a lover. He will never impose himself. But this is his wedding proposal to us. When I proposed to Kristalina, I did not go to that lengths. I tried to be kind of cute and romantic. I proposed to her during a high school assembly in front of 800 students. I figured she couldn't say no in front of all of them, so it was a good, safe bet for me. And And so the assembly's ending. I say, I'm going to end today's talk a little different. And I wink at the front row of seniors, and they got up and leave. And Crystal's like, where are they going? I'm like, they probably have a volleyball game. And they went up where I had hidden behind the bleachers 3 dozen roses, a dozen yellow for friendship, white for purity, and red for love. And they started processing to her with all the roses. And I said this white represents our purity. Our purity is our super glue. And I said this yellow is our friendship. I said, you're my best friend. The Bible says he who has found a friend has found a sturdy shelter, a treasure, and this red represents our love, and I just want to love you for life. And I just drop down on one knee, and the whole high school jumps up. They start screaming, and I'm like, shut up so I can ask her. And, and they got real quiet, and I said, Crystalina, will you be my bride for life? And she said yes. And then afterwards, the guy came up. He's like, do you guys do this at every assembly? And I'm like, no, that was it. But that's how I propose to my wife on bended knee like that. This is how he proposes to his bride. And his invitation requires a response. An indecision is a decision. And so tonight we invite you to open your hearts to make that decision. No matter where you're at right now in your life, it doesn't matter where you've been or what you've done. All that matters now is where you go from here. And I often say during my chastity talks, there's only one thing you got to hear, it's this. That after hearing all the stuff this weekend, maybe your heart's heavy. You got a lot of thinking you got to do. All you need to know is one thing, how God looks at you for doing that stuff. This is how he sees you. Dad, a few years ago, dropped his son off at preschool. He said, I love you. I'll pick up after school. Promise, come get you. Kiss the boy. I went to work. Huge earthquake struck Armenia. The dad shoots back. It's too late. School's collapsed. Faculty's dead. Dad starts digging for 5 hours, 10 hours. People start mocking him. He said, I know my boys in that school dug for 20 hours. People said, you have to give up and accept it. They're gone. He dug for 30 hours. Like you guys, fathers one day, dig for your kid forever. And he said, all I could think when I dug for my boy is a promise I always made to him that no matter what happens, I'm always going to be there for you. 38 hours later, he lifts up a board, and under that's the face of his son. And he looks down at his son, and his son turned to 14 kids trapped alive with him, and he said, see, told you my daddy was coming to get me. I told you he promised, Papa. This is the love of the Heavenly Father. And like I had said to the guys earlier, Saint Therese of Lisieux said it is a much better thing to talk to God than to talk about God. And how I want to close tonight to transition into the prayer is through reading and praying with you the last prayer that Mother Teresa apparently ever composed. One of my favorites from her. And when I put this on the screen, pray it in your heart while I do the reading, but allow this thing to speak to you because I think it kind of sums up everything we've been trying to say the entire weekend. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. I worry some of you still have not really met Jesus, one-to-one, you and Jesus alone. We may spend time in chapel, but have you seen with the eyes of your soul how he looks at you with love? Do you really know the living Jesus, not from books, but from being with him in your heart? Have you heard the loving words he speaks to you? Ask for the grace. He's longing to give it. Never give up this daily intimate contact with Jesus as the real living person, not just the idea. How can we last even one day without hearing Jesus say, I love you? It's impossible. Our soul needs that as much as the body needs to breathe the air. If not, prayer is dead. Meditation's only thinking. Jesus wants each of you to hear him speaking in the silence of your heart. Be careful of all that can block that personal contact with the living Jesus. The devil may try to use the hurts of life and sometimes our own mistakes to make you feel it's impossible that Jesus really loves you, is really cleaving to you. This is a danger for all of us, and it's so sad because it's completely the opposite of what Jesus is really wanting and waiting to tell you. Not only that he loves you, but even more, he longs for you. He misses you when you don't come close. He thirsts for you. He loves you always, even when you don't feel worthy. When not accepted by others, even by yourself sometimes, he is the one who always accepts you. Only believe you are precious to him. Bring all of your suffering to his feet. Only open your heart to be loved by him as you are, and he will do the rest.